Hello, wanted to check in and cover a few things today. Here's the list that I always try to make. The first one's magic. I posted on my YouTube channel. This guy Kyle did this magic tricks that's really good, and so take a look at that. And I'll put the link on the Blackboard page too. And then today I also wanted to talk about unemployment numbers, and then the Middle East, and the question for the day, which will give you extra credit or even discussion question that you wouldn't need to do. The question for today is going to be, let's see, Joe Biden just got enough delegates to be the nominee for the Democrats for president. How many delegates did he need to be able to get the nomination to be the president? Of course, we still have to wait for them to have their convention, and then at the convention, that's when it would all be settled. But how many delegates did he need to become the nominee for president for the Democrats? Okay, so that's the question that you'll have to answer to get either extra credit, or I've been giving it, right, for those of you who have done it, I've let you skip a discussion question for it. So try to get that done. Let me grab some of these things that I wanted to cover. This is the Wall Street Journal from Saturday, and the Wall Street Journal is talking about what happened with the unemployment numbers. And so I'll zoom in a little bit for that. And I don't know if anybody paid that close of attention to it, but in, let's see, in April, the unemployment number was 14.7%, which of course is a huge number, right? And then there was a surprise drop in May where it went down to 13.3%. And you may recall, like in February, the unemployment number was 3.5%. So of course we had this huge jump because we were closing down the economy. And so what I thought we'd talk about is, you know, what does this mean, and what's this going to do for what the government's going to have to do as far as like adding more stimulus to the economy. And so since we had the unemployment number go down, and there was technically 2.5 million jobs created in the month of May, which means, you know, a lot more people went back to work because they had been laid off or something, and then the companies opened and they said, come back to work, and so 2.5 million jobs are created. And so what's the government going to do? Do we need to do extra stimulus? Do we need to like expand unemployment benefits and things like that? And it sounds like they're going to wait a little while. I know the Democrats have already said that they want to do something, basically stimulus package number 4, but in actuality the Republicans said, why don't we just wait and see what happens, because we've already spent about $3 trillion, and see whether or not that's going to work out. And so probably it's going to wait a little while, especially because these numbers came back that were pretty good. Another thing that you might have been able to see when I held this up is it also shows unemployment by race, and you can see for whites the unemployment rate is at 12.4%, the overall rate is at 13.3%, Asian Americans is at 15%, blacks is at 16.8%, and Hispanics is at 17.6%. And so, you know, what industries have been impacted the most is going to lead to these job losses. And so we've already heard that it's been lower income earners that have been impacted the most, and certainly Hispanics and blacks have been the largest group impacted. And of course, with the whites at 12.4%, much lower than even the national average. So something to keep in mind as far as those numbers go. But again, we'll just wait and see whether or not they're going to make any changes to the stimulus packages, unemployment rate, unemployment assistance, and things like that. So we'll keep an eye on unemployment numbers. The other thing that I wanted to cover, which is in our notes for this week, is I wanted to discuss some things that are certainly going to always have an impact on American politics, and that's the Middle East. And so the easiest way to like kind of start talking about the Middle East is to take a look at a map. And I put a map link on our on Blackboard, but this shows a little bit more detail of the Middle East. Actually, I think I can widen that out even a little bit more. And the one that I like to focus on is what's going on here? Here's Iran, and oh, you can't see that. Iran's right there, and in the middle of Iran is Afghanistan, and on the sides of Iran is Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay, so if you were Iran, would you take a look at that and be like, oh, the United States has attacked Afghanistan and they've attacked Iraq, so would you be concerned that maybe they're going to attack Iran next because they're right in the middle of it? And of course, we do have military personnel throughout the Middle East, certainly in Saudi Arabia, and that was one of the things that caused 9/11, because so Osama bin Laden was mad that we had our military in basically what is the Holy Land for the Muslim faith, and so he was mad that the United States had our military there, and said that that's like that's basically going against the Muslim faith, and so that's why he like orchestrated the attacks of 9/11. And so certainly we've got military there. We've got military for sure in Iraq. We even have some in Syria, and of course Syria is such a mess. They've got a civil war that continues to go there. That's basically where ISIS began. Northern Iraq and southern Syria is where ISIS began. If you take a look up at a little bit north of there, that's where Turkey is. And along the Turkish border is about 3 million refugees who have come out of Syria, and they're really just living in refugee tents there. And it was kind of interesting when Turkey started taking all those refugees. Many of the refugees like wanted to move on and get into Europe somehow. And if they could get into Europe, then they could like start a new life, get a job, raise a family, and things like that. So the Turkish government was like, okay, go ahead and go to Europe. You know, that's fine with us. And it was fine for some of the European countries for a little while. Like even Germany took about 1 million refugees. But then at some point they're like, okay, now we've got too many refugees. And they went to Turkey and they said, hey, Turkey, can you just keep the refugees there and leave them along like the border with Syria? And Turkey was like, well, I mean, I guess I could, as long as the European Union pays us like $3 billion to do it. And so European Union said, okay, we'll pay you the $3 billion. And then like every year since, Turkey goes back and it's like, you owe us another $2 billion, you owe us $2 billion more. Because of course, that's hard on them too, right? Like they don't have the resources to be able to do that. And the rest of Europe wants to stop the flow of the immigrants going into, and refugees going into these other countries. Now I screwed this thing up. And so that's part of it. If you take look a little bit further over to the other side here, we've got Greece, and Greece has been in an economic recession and depression for many years. Their economy is terrible. They are part of the European Union, and they keep having to go to the European Union and ask them for assistance. And so when they go to the European Union and ask them for assistance, the European Union says, okay, fine, but you've got to go on some sort of an austerity program being cut how much you're giving out in, as far as relief to the citizens, and also increase taxes. And so cut spending and increase taxes. And so under an economic austerity program, that's what the European Union has been sort of forcing them to do. At least these days, Jordan, and I know it's hard to see all this stuff, Jordan and Egypt have been pretty calm, and they haven't been fighting with Israel, but Israel does continue to have issues with Lebanon and certainly in the West Bank, and I'm going to post a video that talks about what's going on in the West Bank, and so take a look at that too. If we went further over here in the Middle East, which I think I got this thing screwed up now, we went further over here, we would come across, Tunisia, and that's like in northern Africa, and that's actually where the Arab Spring began. And with the Arab Spring, basically that's where they were saying, we're tired of these totalitarian leaders, we want to have some freedoms. And so when that started, it spread across the Middle East, went to Libya, went to Egypt, went to Syria, and that's what led to all of these sort of totalitarian leaders being taken out, but also at the same time, like a lot of upheaval in the Middle East. And so those are some important things that are going on over there. If we like slide over a little bit further into Europe, one interesting thing that I want to talk about in a future lecture is talking about what happened with Ukraine and the Soviet Union, basically Russia taking over Crimea, which was a part of Ukraine, but it was where the Soviet Union or Russia had all of its military bases, a lot of these like naval bases there, which by the way, also in Syria, Russia also has a naval base there. And so the United States has to tread pretty lightly around there because we can't, accidentally shoot down like a Russian fighter jet. And so I know we're like bouncing back and forth in there, and we've even bombed them before. President Trump called for them to be bombed because they were using chemical weapons against their people. And when they did that, we had to first let the Russians know, hey, make sure that you don't have any of your fighter jets there because we're about to shoot some cruise missiles into one of these air bases. And so you have to like be pretty careful about what you're doing in some of those Middle Eastern areas. And so anyway, take a look at the map just so you familiarize yourself with it, because it's a big foreign policy issue for the United States and it keeps coming back to us, and we'll be talking about it throughout the class this semester. So I was having some technical issues, and so with those technical issues, you'll have to like wait maybe until the end of the day for me to post the next set of notes. And then just a reminder, the question of the day is the delegates needed for the Democratic nominee to be to get the nomination at the Democratic National Convention. So that's for today, and I'll check in with you later this week.